Welcome back to Nerd Pod, where we discuss nerdy news, TV, movies, and much more. If you're a first-time viewer or listener, welcome. I'm Christian, and I'm glad you're here today. I'm here with my very own super friends. I have Miss Candy. How are you today, Candy?
Good.
Good to hear that. We have Mark. How are you doing, Mark?
Hi. Oh.
What is that? I wonder why that's there. And we have Miss Michelle. How are you today, Michelle?
Good. Just had Black Panther in the background, actually. I should turn that down.
I love it. Proof that we are all nerds here. So, we're going to start off today with just a quick bit of news. We have actor Kit Harington, who obviously is big for his Game of Thrones appearance, finally giving us some news about the Eternals. We haven't heard anything about that for a long time. He has said it is officially done filming. They have a lot of time to edit it. So does anybody have any feelings about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate because obviously before all this craziness with the pandemic started, it was supposed to come out in November, like pretty much right around Thanksgiving would have been really cool. It's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to. And now, like you said, they have plenty of time to edit, but I'm sure that they are almost kind of set in what they and what they have to. So we basically have to wait until like February or March to see it now, which kind of sucks. But at least it gives something to look forward to for early 2021.
Right. Exactly. They've talked about 8 months before we're going to see it. So I didn't know a lot about the Eternals, but again, I'm going to be excited for anything superhero related. Does anybody, I know Candy said she might not really have anything to say. Michelle, do you have any feelings about it?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for it. I'm trying to think cup half full. Even though with the virus, it's going to delay the release. At least it means there won't be anything that's rushed about post-production, which means we should get a really good quality product in terms of like at least visuals and all of that. We don't know about story, but hey, I mean, if they have, at least they'll have time for reshoots too. We know that happens in nearly every film of this magnitude. So, it's a bummer, but at the same time, Marvel has had such a good track record. I'm okay. I've got Disney Plus and Mandalorian to hold me over, so I'll be okay.
Now, I like your positive outlook on it because that is very true. Unfortunately, we've had other stuff that we felt like is rushed, and hopefully this won't be one of them. More MCU news. We have heard that The Punisher might be showing up in the Moon Knight series that's supposed to be on Disney Plus. So we've talked about The Punisher briefly before. If you heard our Nerd Pod where we talked about people we would like to see in the MCU, we did bring up The Punisher and wanting to see him a little bit more. Let's see, Candy, do you have any feelings about him maybe showing up? Do you know much about The Punisher?
I don't know too much about The Punisher, but I would like to. So, what goes up?
Yes, I'm excited for the Moon Knight series just in general to get, because he's going to be a very different hero than what we've seen so far. Yeah. How do you feel about it, Michelle?
Oh, I love Moon Knight. I'm a big fan of the Moon Knight comics. Since Werewolf by Night number 32, I read the original one, and it's been one of the ones that like it always flew under the radar, but I always understood why, because it's kind of like a Punisher type of character where it's very violent, but it's gritty, and I like it, and I think that putting the Punisher in that show would be pretty cool. They've had a lot of series together in the comics, and I'm just kind of excited to see what the look will be of Moon Knight. He doesn't have a really conventional look in terms of like, every superhero is kind of like has a costume that's for like camouflage.
Yeah.
His is kind of like standing out.
Yes. He's going to be a really, really cool character.
Yeah, definitely.
And how about you, Mark?
So this is pretty exciting. One of the podcasts that I listened to actually interviewed Jon Bernthal not too long ago about some other project. Actually, it was about Ford versus Ferrari, which he played Lee Iacocca. But they asked him, the obligatory question, like, oh, would you want to reprise Punisher again and do so like in Marvel, and he was kind of coy about it, which you kind of have to be if you're associated with Marvel. Like they pretty much have someone ready to like terminate you at any time if if you like say something you're not supposed to. So, but he did kind of say like, yeah, if there's a good story out there, I'd like to be a part of it. And I know that Kevin Feige is at least open to some of the, even though he's made it very clear, if you were on a Netflix show or an ABC show, what you did doesn't exist.
Doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm.
But he has made it clear, like, yeah, if there are some of these actors who did a good job portraying these characters, that they wouldn't mind, bringing essentially a different version of them into their new continuity. So if he were to show up as part of the Moon Knight series, that'd be really cool. Punisher's kind of a character who can blend in anywhere, really, just because, if in a world where there's crazy shit happening at all times, Punisher's someone who's, the crazy, as crazy as stuff gets, he's going to be there. So it's not something that you're going to have to, it's going to be like too much of a stretch to see him in. So but I'd like the focus to be more on the Moon Knight character, because it is a more lesser known character especially for people who aren't like huge into that portion of Marvel Comics. It would be cool to see Punisher, because I thought Jon Bernthal did an amazing job with the Punisher character. I wish that they could have gotten another season, but it just wasn't in the cards. So I'd love to see.
Yes, I like that we're all excited about stuff. I mean, I don't know a lot about Moon Knight. I definitely haven't been into the comics as much, but I know, from what I understand, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, his character deals with mental health issues. Yeah. That's kind of part of who he is. And so I really love that the MCU is not afraid of stepping into that, because I feel like it's a time when all of us are paying more attention to mental health and learning more about it. So I'm really glad that we get the Moon Knight series, and I think the Punisher is going to be an awesome guy to have in that. Like Mark said, I think he'll blend in anywhere, so I'm very much hoping that becomes an official confirmed thing that we hear. Now, I know amongst most of our Nerd Pod people, I'm the only anime watcher. Michelle, do you watch anime? I don't want to speak incorrectly.
Honestly, the last one I saw was Cowboy Bebop, so you can kind of count me out.
Okay, that's all right. Cowboy Bebop's a good one to see. So for any of our listeners or viewers who are anime people, we have heard that Attack on Titan is releasing its final season. That's an anime that's been very big for a while. It's honestly, if you guys ever wanted to check it out, it's gritty and gory, and it has a lot of almost espionage qualities to it. So that one is coming to the end. I know a lot of people are upset about it. I personally thought Attack on Titan was a little much for me, so I didn't watch it. But if you guys ever want to check it out, you now know that you'll be able to watch the whole series. So speaking of, Attack on Titan's been around for a while. We're going to talk about time today. So we're going to start off with a little bit. Mr. Stark, would you like to comment on time travel? No, I'm joking, Mark. I do love that you dressed up for us. So we are going to be discussing time travel in the MCU. We obviously, hopefully, if you haven't seen Endgame, spoiler alert, there's time travel.
Yeah.
And we're going to go around the room and just talk about how that time travel worked and what we think about it very briefly. So time travel was able to happen in the MCU because of the quantum realm that Ant-Man explores. We see it in his solo films. He obviously comes out of the quantum realm and in Endgame and allows them to be able to time travel. It causes a bit of a break from other time travel stuff we've seen. They obviously crack jokes at Back to the Future. It's nothing like that. But as we move further in, we realize it's different, but not different at the same time. So let's go ahead and start with Mark. How do you feel about time travel in the MCU?
I liked the way that they used it. I don't know if it's going to be like a huge thing moving forward. I think moving forward, they're going to be doing a lot more cosmic stuff, whether that's stuff actually out in space itself, or with the Multiverse of Madness coming up, like finding different ways to explore the multiverse, maybe through magic or less like conventional scientific. Plus the people who would have been, the person who really made time travel possible was Tony Stark, R.I.P.
Yeah.
And, obviously, the other half of that equation too being Dr. Pym, who doesn't want to share his technology with anyone. Actually, that's one of the storylines I'm really excited to see if they explore whether or not Dr. Pym's pissed that even though using his technology saved his life and brought him back to life, that he'd be pissed that Scott gave his technology to Stark. But
he might have a punch waiting for him next time they see each other.
Yeah, Dr. Pym could still pack a good punch. But I like the way that they established it, and I know that we're gonna get into what are maybe some discrepancies on what the film states takes place when you travel back in time and what has been said since it came out. But from the way I understood it, if you from what the conversation the Ancient One and Hulk had, if you go back and change something in the past, it doesn't, like Back to the Future style, just automatically change your future. It basically creates a brand new timeline that exists separately. And I kind of like it better that way. I like that it doesn't like take away. You can't undo something like they were saying with oh yeah, let's take care of baby Thanos. You can do any of it. I like that it doesn't just give you a get out of jail free card, but things that happen in your present. So I kind of like that consequences still exist, and you got to be careful because if you mess up and Loki gets the Tesseract, then you get a series.
Oh darn. Yes, I'm glad you brought up the multiverse because that obviously is a huge Easter egg for people who maybe aren't as into the comics and stuff. Maybe they just watch the movies and don't understand that there is a multiverse. That was a big thing to drop in that movie. So how do you feel about it, Candy?
So initially when they explained like the whole time travel thing, I was like, this makes sense. Like they're explaining it well, like, yeah, this isn't like the typical, like, you just go back in time and if something changes, everything changes because how do you get around that stuff? I guess we're going to talk about that. But
yeah.
And then I got home and I was still happy with it. And then I sat with it for, as long as it's been. And it's just like, but what about this? But what about this? And
yes.
Everything popping up. And it's like, okay, yeah, like you can't change anything. Like anything you change in the past doesn't change the future. But like, what if the past comes to the future and dies? Because that happens. So like,
yes.
Like.
Right. Brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah. And it obviously like going back in time changes things. Like, if like those things don't come back, like those Pym particles that they took when they needed extra ones when it didn't work out the first time, those don't like they didn't bring those back. So like what happens with that? Like, and I'm super interested if they're gonna do something with like Howard Stark in that because there was already like a fight going on kind of in that time period. But then like if they're not gonna explore it, like I don't know. The more it's like I have questions, y'all. Like,
which just means that you have an amazing brain. Because I'm one of those people too. When I watch it, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, okay, I like it.
I liked the way they did it though. I was like, okay, like when they're explaining like, oh, you take the Infinity Stone out and it creates this, and they have like the diagram because magic and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I needed that because they tried to explain it earlier with Banner doing it, and I was like, and I was like, okay, I don't really get it. But then when they had like her explaining it to him with like the magic, and I was like, that makes more sense. But then they did take other things out and like they did mess up some things, like, and now are those just like canon to the story? Like Star-Lord got knocked out before they took the stone. Did that actually happen now? Like, and he just like never took anybody? Like, I don't know.
No, it's good. And I start to wonder with Marvel being as successful as it has, how much of that stuff they did on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Loki getting away with the Tesseract and then that being a show, that couldn't have been an accident. So how do you feel about it, Michelle?
It's funny because everybody was thinking about like Back to the Future when they first mentioned it, but I was thinking of that Ashton Kutcher movie, Butterfly Effect.
Butterfly Effect.
Where
Mm-hmm.
you guys, I don't know if you guys remember that one. And I kept thinking to myself, like, Jesus, every time he went back in time and changed one thing, and whether it was big or not, it was just, and it would make like such a huge ripple effect to where his future was so drastically different. And thing that I didn't really, still to right now, I don't understand how they're gonna address it, is Gamora leaving her past and now staying in the future. How does that not change the new, like what happened back then, because she's not there? So I'm just kind of like, where Endgame addressed it, and they were like, if you go back and you change, it doesn't become it's just a whole mess of things. And I'm like, so what are you going to do with Gamora? I mean, I'm happy she's back. I love Zoe Saldana. I think she's such a great actress, and she's a great, she does a great job as Gamora. So I'm happy that she's back. I just wonder how they're going to address that, because they made such a big deal about changing the past and how it can affect the future. But like you said, we have a multiverse. So I don't know if this is going to be part of the multiverse that they're going to explore, because that's also Doctor Strange's, realm. It's pretty interesting, and I'm kind of like, that part right there is the one thing that I can't reconcile with everything else that Endgame established when it came to time travel.
So speaking on that, Thanos came back with Gamora, and she died. So it's like,
and Nebula died. I mean, a previous version of Thanos that has done so many other things is now dead. So none of those things are going to happen. So it kind of makes me feel like right off the bat, we're already dealing with what they call a branch reality. Our version of the MCU is now officially a part of a multiverse.
And I think it was intentional.
Oh, sorry.
I think it was very much intentional, because the way I understood it is that everything that happened in that movie that differs at all, like even the most minute thing from the original story, essentially created a branch reality. The only exceptions to that are what was done to take an Infinity Stone, because they made a point of saying that Cap was going to go back to the very thing that was taken to prevent creating a branch reality, which begs the question, how awkward was it when he went back to give the Soul Stone to the Red Skull?
Yes.
So is it only like the Infinity Stones that you can return, or like how much of it was like everything you do changes it? Because it was like, to me, it was nothing you do changes it, as long as you put things back and leave, like,
From what I gathered, it was like the only thing that you could undo was the time stone, or the different Infinity Stones being missing from their time, which would throw everything out of whack.
Because they're so powerful.
Well,
so like we basically got several different timelines. So I mean, like you guys pointed out, we have a timeline now where the Guardians of the Galaxy never get together. Like that. That's because 2014, Gamora, Nebula, and Thanos, and all of Thanos' army, like his entire army, all leave to go to 2023, and they all die. So, or Gamora is still poking around in 2023. But so like that new branch reality, the Guardians of the Galaxy never get together. So like that, that's the way I understood it. Is that they basically, anything that you did differently creates another, essentially, multiverse.
Yes. Is that how you saw it, Candy?
I don't know. Like at first I was like, but like after listening, it's like there are like major things, obviously, like that create reality. But like, are the little other things like you're messing up something in the past, like butterfly effect style, like a butterfly landing, like those little things? Did those create branch realities too, or only like the big moves, like Loki going back and like getting the Tesseract and like Gamora and Thanos and Nebula and all of those things? And then the pin particles, I think, is huge, because he took like the pin particles, and you don't know what that. So like, but is it like the little stuff too that also creates like a different branch reality, or only like those like main points? Like how many branches? Like, I don't know.
I think it is. I think it is. I think like anything that differs from the way it originally happened. I mean, think of if you decide to leave your house 10 minutes later than originally, your day drastically changes. So, I mean, I think that literally anything that happened that was different creates some sort of a different reality.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Well, and I would agree with that in that I feel like it relates to the butterfly effect in that way, that there is a huge possibility. I know the Ancient One kind of explained it like, oh, the Infinity Stones are the things that are going to create branch realities, but I just have a hard time saying that would be hard and fast. I feel like it's more like, instead of butterfly effects, we get branch realities. We get a multiverse. Is that kind of how you would take it, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's the Endgame, even though, like I said, it tried to address the problems of time travel, like kind of like nipping it in the bud. At the end of the day, it still created those problems, whether it was the Infinity Stone or a character or the Pym particles being moved. Like, at the end of the day, it still created a branch reality. So then you're kind of like I said, I try to reconcile it, and I'm just like, where's Ashton Kutcher? Like, just bring him in.
Yeah.
Bring him in.
I'm ready. Let's just admit what this is.
Yeah. Let's just bring him in. It didn't end all terribly for him, right? He still met up with the girl in the end after killing her a couple of times.
Right? What do you think, Candy? I hear you ready to get in.
I mean, I think it was a mixture between like a linear explanation of time travel and a butterfly explanation of time travel. And obviously, not really like a grandfather effect, because otherwise, like, Nebula would never be alive to like kill herself.
Right. They definitely like cut that off right then when she killed her younger self. It's like, well, okay, so we're not doing that rule.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't happen. So I think it's like a mixture of like both. I don't know.
That's so weird. Yeah, I forgot about Nebula.
Right? Part of me was waiting for her to like dust away. Like, I was like, wait, what if, like, I don't know. I started to like Nebula now with her time with Tony Stark. I was like, don't have it be some kind of twist that like she kills her younger self and then she does actually die. I don't want that to happen. But I'm glad Candy is I love that, Candy, I can tell you're really passionate about this, and you're actually the inspiration for why we did this show today, because you pointed out something very interesting, and that is that it has been confirmed that Peggy's children from that she speaks about in Winter Soldier, that we see in pictures, are Cap's kids. So I want to let Candy speak on it first, since she brought it up.
Okay, so first, I didn't know this was confirmed when I first brought it up, because I was reading memes, as we all do. Well, even not during quarantine, let's be real. But it was like, oh, so basically Cap went back in time just to, excuse my language, cuck. And I was like, oh shit, Peggy had a husband. What's Peggy's husband? And then I was like, oh shit. Like, is Cap Peggy's husband? Because, like, you don't know who Peggy's husband is.
No, that's true.
And this is her husband and her two kids come up in Winter Soldier. And first it pans to just, like, her when Captain America's talking to her when she's older. It pans to two picture frames on the side of her bed where you see her holding a kid with a husband and another kid. And, like, family pictures, right? But like, or not with a husband. Her husband's not in the pictures. Just her kids are in them. And then when he goes to like the Smithsonian Museum about him and all that stuff, Peggy is this big like character, and it doesn't mention who her husband is. It says she got married and her husband's unknown. So I was like, excuse me, like, what is going on here? I brought the group, and obviously now we're talking about it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's confirmed that it was the intention the whole time, at least by the writers, that Cap was the father and husband to Peggy's kids, and obviously husband to herself. I worded that weird.
No, you're good. Yes, and go ahead. Sorry.
No, and it just begs the question that do we have like two people with like half super soldier blood running around?
Yes. And that's the interesting part. And I know some people have been saying, you know, it is confirmed because Christopher Marcus and Stephen Freely said yes, but obviously they weren't directing those movies at that time. So I know some people are arguing it is confirmed, but it's not because this person didn't say it and that kind of stuff. And we have these big conflicts of, have there been two Caps the whole time? Or some people have brought up, did Cap, by going back and spending the rest of his life with Peggy, create another multiverse? And then how did he get back to ours to be able to pass on the shield to Falcon? So it's a lot to process. How do you feel about it, Michelle? What are your opinions?
Oh man, time travel again. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
First of all, I know this is kind of random, but did we ever establish? Well, we know because we know the comics or whatever, that Sharon Carter is indeed a family member of Peggy Carter,
of
right?
Peggy. Yes, she's her niece.
Right?
Yeah,
And it's her niece in the MCU movies as well.
yes.
Yeah, it's creepy. But anyway,
Cap did for sure.
Right.
Cap's going through that family tree, man. I tell you.
He didn't know.
That's true. So I kind of wonder if at any point Cap's children, because the serum worked, obviously, since we have Captain America. So it changed him on a biological level enough for him to become what he became, because otherwise he would have become the Hulk. So it's, I would like the idea of seeing his kids in the films, maybe in the future or on a TV show. I don't think we'll see him anytime soon because I think it'll take away from the Falcon storyline, because he is our new Captain America, and I don't want it to seem like his kids should have taken the mantle or anything like that. Cap passed it down to Sam because he felt he was the best one for the job. But it would be cool to see Rogers' kids in the Marvel universe. But I also do feel like do they exist in a different multiverse, or again, right? It's kind of like to understand how that works, because again, he lived his life and then he went back. And then he went back to the future the regular way.
Yeah.
Did he change anything? Because Cap was a pretty popular person back in the day, in the 1950s, when he had a lot of the lines as the war hero in World War II. And I always see this brought up in memes when it comes to the race issue, especially. I know right now it's a little bit of a touchy subject, but I feel like, did Cap also change anything in history that could have, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's a kind of a weird thing. But we see the meme like, oh, Cap went back to the racist time. Did he change anything there too? Because he was a beacon of light and morality and all this stuff.
Yes. And he would not have stood for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moral stuff. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt real fast, but also if he went back in time, he knew Bucky was being held and being hypnotized that whole time.
That is true. That is true. I didn't think of that. I had my own comments to make, but I didn't think about that part. But yes,
killing Tony's parents too.
Yeah. Yes. See, and I didn't even think about that, because my thing was, I could see our Cap from 2023 going back and saying, you know what? I fought the fight. God bless you. I fought the fight. I know that for this timeline, I'm still in the ice, but the world is okay. So I thought this could be our Cap just saying, you know what? I've done what I need to do. Eventually, I'll come out of the ice, and that whole time travel mind warp thing that happens when we talk about it. But I could see him just saying, I'm going to be normal, and I'm going to let myself live a normal life and be out of the spotlight, because the world's going to be okay without me. But I didn't think about that, Candy. That's a really good point you brought up. How do you feel about it, Mark?
So I think that this is one of the very, very rare occasions where Marvel made an error in their explanation.
Okay.
Not during the movie, but afterward. Because I think that the comments that Candy picked up on from Marcus and McFeely, I think that they were incorrect in what they said, because their comments completely contradicted what the Russos said, because the Russos made a they did like an actual like Q&A with fans after a bunch of screenings once spoiler embargoes were lifted, and they were pretty clear saying like, no, Cap going back in time at the end creates another timeline where he marries Peggy. So basically, like Candy said, he cucks her original husband.
They do never show her husband, and her husband is a mystery the whole time. So it's like,
that's definitely not lost on me, because the only time we see in Winter Soldier a clip where Peggy says that Cap rescued the man who would eventually be her husband, which would imply that it was one of his fellow soldiers in WW2, but we don't know who that is for sure. So they left that open, and I don't know if that was to try and write in eventually that it became Steve, but then they explained time travel a different way and then couldn't go that route. So I think that someone's just not on the same page from in that production crew, because it seems like you have two different parties saying different things, because the way that I interpreted it, and the way the Russos said it, was that Cap basically goes back in time and then creates another timeline where there are two Captain Americas at the same time. He's there with Peggy. The other version of him is in the ice, kind of like Austin Powers when he goes back in time.
When he loses his mojo.
Yeah. So that's the way that I and what Candy brought up is I thought the same thing. Like, does he, because he's already created a branch reality by going back there, I wonder if he, even though he's fought the good fight already, I wonder if he does things to change that timeline because he knows that it won't impact his original timeline. So maybe he does free Bucky from, or try to free Bucky. Technology doesn't exist to get rid of the brainwashing, but maybe he tries to keep Bucky from doing some of the terrible things that Hydra made him do. Maybe he tries to stop different events in history that he knows happens. Like maybe he tries to do good while being married to Peggy. But the way that I did interpret it was that he did create another timeline by going back.
Well, how did he get to the original one to get back his shield?
And that's the big question that comes up with that.
So shield
did he maybe find
a brand new shield?
Yeah,
it's a brand new shield, the one that he gives to Sam, and I didn't pick up on that at first at all. And then when someone showed pictures for the new Falcon and Winter Soldier show, where it shows the government's choice for Captain America, which basically they're going to try and keep Sam Wilson from being Cap. It's one of the premises of the show. They hand him this guy, John Walker, who's, if you're not an avid reader of comics, that's U.S. agent. He is holding the same shield that Sam Wilson is given by Cap at the end of Endgame, which has a slight difference in design from the one that Thanos broke in half earlier. So it is a different shield, he is an old man and he is there. So he did travel. Like if it is multiverse, it means he's found to travel the multiverse. Yeah, no, that's the only thing that I still don't quite understand. Is gets back there, because the Russos, when being asked to explain that, they couldn't really give it an explanation, whether or not he, based on the technology that he had been given, was able to travel to that point in time. Maybe he creates another timeline by doing that, where he travels.
Yeah, right.
Well, just like with time travel, it always gets messy. Like the more you think about it, the deeper in the rabbit hole you go, and you're just like, I need a GPS to navigate this rabbit hole because it's getting kind of crazy in here. Right. It's just inevitable.
And I feel like sometimes being the creative side of things versus the fans and the viewers, I think sometimes the viewers outpace the creative. When we start asking so many questions that they're just like, we don't know. This is what happened. This is how we wanted it to be. And the interesting thing about Cap having kids is, if they were to ever make it relevant, it has been shown that Cap has kids. He has a son named James Roger, who showed up in an animated movie, who had powers similar to Cap. And the thing that always killed me, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I love Peggy. I loved the whole Natasha and Bruce romance thing. But Cap and Black Widow are supposed to have a romance, and James Rogers is actually their child. And I was waiting the whole series for them to have their romantic moment. I think their friendship was amazing, and I value that. But I mean, maybe there's another timeline in the multiverse where James Rogers is real. We have he's the son, and then Cap has a daughter whose story is even more bizarre because she is actually the daughter of Cap and Rogue, the mutant, but not just Rogue, who has absorbed Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel's essence and her soul. So she has all of her powers. So their daughter, Sarah Rogers, is super powered. She has powers very similar to Captain Marvel. And so if they were to ever bring these kids in, it would definitely have to be in a big way. At least for sure for Sarah Rogers, I think it would have to be a very big role just because of how superpowered she is. But I would be interested to see, would they bring James Rogers in? Maybe just as a character who works with sword, maybe. I don't know. It's an interesting thing that they've left us with.
My opinion of that is that they're going to make Cap's kids. If they make Cap's kids, they're not going to be comic wise. Like the same way that like Adam Warlock isn't the same like thing, like storyline. I have a feeling they're going to bring in like a less known like comic hero, like and use them and say this is Cap's kids, like that they want to bring in that isn't known enough like to gather that kind of like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Like they wouldn't be able to put them in too big of a role. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was going to say Cap and Black Widow were on the run for a couple years there. I think that there was some romance.
Who knows?
You got no other human contact. Like it was them and Falcon. Falcon was probably in the other room. Like I think there was something.
I mean, Falcon could have put the game on for all we know, though. Don't count him out.
That's true.
Captain America has kids all over the place, with everybody, all over the universe, all over the multi.
Yeah, right. He has like 100 kids in the MCU.
Awesome.
How do you feel about it, Michelle? Do you think we'll see his kids in the future?
I sure hope so. It would be nice if it's an illegitimate, Black Widow Captain America child. I'm all for it. I always thought that would have been an interesting sort of dilemma for him as a character if they had gone that route instead of the bizarre Black Widow Hulk romance, which I will never get over. I know that sounds super fangirl of me. I know, very comic nerd like, but I can't get over that. It was just one of the worst things about Age of Ultron, and a lot of bad things in that movie for me. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see them in the cinematic universe, even as parts of S.H.I.E.L.D., maybe the new S.H.I.E.L.D. or the new Avengers, even in a like sort of an administrative capacity, if they don't want to be in the front lines or whatever. It would be really nice to see his legacy go on, besides just Sam and the
and passing the mantle on.
Exactly.
Mind you, his kids would be in their 60s at this point in the MCU.
That's true.
Which, I mean, am I the only one who thought and understood that the super soldier serum is supposed to slow down aging? Because when Cap showed up as an old man, I was like, how long has it been since he went back? Because
that makes it adds up. I did the math.
Well,
he lived his whole life. And he's like, how old when Endgame happens? And then he goes back in time, but he's already lived those years. His body didn't de-age. So then he's living all that time double. So he's literally double his age in the Endgame at that point. And plus the years he was in the ice. So how many years was he in the ice?
And being in the ice didn't age him. All his years in the ice, he didn't emerge any more age than he was. So if we...
I'm pretty sure, because he was born in 1918. They said in Winter Soldier. So he basically went into the ice at the age of 27. And from what I understand, he pretty much, when he thawed out in 2012, he was still 27. So then he basically ages another 11 years, goes back when he's around 38, and then emerges again in 2023. So at that time, he's like almost 120 years old.
Yeah.
So I guess I could see him looking the way he does. That was always something that I was just like, should he be that old? And maybe he passed that on to his kids, and maybe that could be why we get to see his kids as more youthful versions of themselves.
Maybe not 60, really, but we would probably maybe see them like in their 40s or whatever. We wouldn't see them very young. You can tell Cap's still aged, but realistically speaking, if the serum allows him to heal, and technically aging is, basically your skin cells starting to die, he would be able to regenerate through time. So if we're going at it from like a science point of view, yes, we should be able to see his kids at a somewhat younger level age look, even though they're in their 60s.
Well, that depends on how much of like the genetic makeup passed on.
Right, that's true too.
Like at half capacity, or if it's at full capacity, is it like recessive dominant genes? I don't know how this works. I'm not a science person. Somebody please explain.
Right. I mean, if you're watching this, comment. Yeah.
Super serum, a dominant or recessive gene? I need to know.
Yeah.
Right. What does it become?
Russo's explain.
It reminds me of when I was when Game of Thrones was on, where people would be like, "How did the dragon get from point A to point B so quick?" And people are like, "Well, if the rate of flapping maintains a steady 80 flaps per minute and a distance of 10,000 miles."
This all makes sense. Science.
This all makes sense, bitch.
Yes. We definitely need the science side of the nerddom to come to our aid on this. Now, we've talked about time travel. We've talked about branch realities. The big one for me is Loki escaped. Loki escaped, and not only did Loki escape while he was still in his very selfish, ill-willed, evil frame of mind. I know I personally bonded with him throughout the movies just because he started to kind of be a nicer person, and I like nice people. And at the time of his death, it was tragic because of the person he had become. So now we have, evil Loki on the loose with the Tesseract. What we find out is the Mind Stone, and he's getting his own show. How do you guys think that is going to play into the rest of the MCU? What do you think, Mark?
So I know that the Loki show is going to introduce some different characters. I think a lot of these shows, one of the reasons why they're doing it is to be able to introduce some ancillary side characters that then can play into some of the movies. So I mean, I think that from what I've kind of read so far, the Loki series is going to be kind of like a man on the run type of style, where he's trying to escape, through time with the Mind Stone. He's going to be chased by the Time Variance Authority, which is probably going to be a cool storyline. Eventually, I think that this is going to lead to him making an appearance in Thor: Love and Thunder. I mean, the Loki character has been in all movies so far. I always check to see if there's any news related to it. It's probably going to be something that they never announce because they want it to be a surprise. But you have to figure that he's going to wind up getting back onto the big screen somehow through and maybe at the end of this show. But like you mentioned, it's not the same Loki who had become a lot finally after thousands of years and become his brother. It's the one who was still very trickstery and mean and nasty. So I don't know if something happens to him over the course of that series that causes him to maybe get more into a friendlier point of view, or maybe he goes up to cause trouble in Thor: Love and Thunder and add another wrinkle to that movie. So one way or another, I think it's going to end up with him getting back onto the big screen somehow.
I could see that. I'm wondering, when you say that, I don't know why, but I think back to I Am Legend, when he sees the dummy outside of the store and he's yelling at him and he's like, "Is that you? are you alive? Like, I could see Thor having that moment with Loki. How do you feel about it, Michelle? Right?
I feel like we're gonna see, like you said, the old Loki, the one, the real god of mischief. But I feel like it's a chance to also see him grow as a character without Thor's influence, and to see that he is still capable of changing without him, whether that be by the interactions he has with other people, or maybe he has finally like a love interest, because we know that that's something that can also be a factor that could change, a character like, Gamora, who's very pro don't touch me, even
Yes.
don't dance with me, to being the Gamora that we knew, right when she died. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see his progression as a character without Thor's influence, because we've always seen him, kind of like juxtaposed with Thor all the time, and see what Loki is capable when he's by himself. Because we've seen it in the villainous way, but I think we'll be able to see it as the hero way, or anti-hero.
Yes, I would love to see him become an anti-hero. How do you feel, Candy?
I have questions. Lots of questions.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So when Loki, we've already talked about the fact that he is not the same person as when he died in Endgame. He's at his most malicious. He's also working for Thanos at this point.
Yes.
So I do not think he's going to give that stone to Thanos. I don't think he ever really had the intention on doing that in the first place. But the whole, going back to the like time travel aspect of this, he's not going to be around for Dark World, right? Like none of those events.
No.
So Asgard would still be like a thing, right? Like
I feel like that's where we come into the whole multiverse thing. Like, yes, there will then possibly be a place where that happens, but we still have Hela, who ultimately escapes and would still go and attack Asgard. So I feel like that's a great question, but it'll be a different universe that happens in.
Things certainly would progress differently. I mean, because Loki plays a big role in the Dark World, and then obviously in Ragnarok too. So even if things end up getting to point B, the way that they get there definitely changes.
Well, it has to be a different what do you call it, multiverse anyways, because he took the stone out of the pit, and he doesn't return that stone. So that stone never goes back to that. Well, not never, but as far as we know, that stone doesn't get returned at that point in time. So it's interesting to see how they're going to play that. I think that's where the series is going to address it. But he is working for Thanos, and it would play a huge role in everything that would happen in Infinity. So it has to be like another part anyways. But I'm just wondering, get like, the Asgardian people back. Like,
yeah, that's valid. And I think it might be an interesting way for them to open the show, in case anybody wants my opinion on that. But if they show Loki going back to try to give the stone to Thanos, but like Thanos and his whole army are piecing out to 2023, and he's like, hello?
You find out
where is everybody?
Time, like,
timelines.
Do it, please.
Listen, we know Kevin
it would be
to this pod, so he's writing down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like Loki looking over the whole Endgame battle and and then just disappearing and going back.
Yes, exactly.
I'm doing
right. Being like, no, I'm good. I don't need any of that. Yeah, I could see it. Now we've talked about Loki. We also have Gamora 2. I'm gonna dub her Gamora 2 running around the MCU. And like Michelle said, this is not the Gamora who has warmed up to, her own emotions and kind of come into her own as, a person who is okay with feeling and connecting with others. This is still our very shut off Gamora, our very guarded Gamora. So with that, and with her being free of Thanos, I mean, she doesn't have to do what he wants anymore. She's her own person now. What do we think she's going to be like? What do you think, Candy?
I have no idea on this one, and I'm really interested to see. if the Guardians are gonna get like her back or like I don't know where this storyline is going, and I like it for that reason. And then that Thor is gonna be there with the Guardians, and
That'll be fun.
not one I've given like as much thought into because I'm still digesting the movie. Like it's like every like something new comes up, and that's at the end.
Yes, and that just tells us it was, I think, a well done movie. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I'm interested to see.
Okay.
He's the outsider of the Guardians. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
sorry.
We got you back now. You're good.
Sorry, I have really bad connection. It's a Florida thing. It's always a Florida thing. Yeah, as I was saying, I'm interested to see what happened with her character now that she's pretty much like an outsider of the Guardians. When she used to be kind of like the glue, she used to be the one that was very like, you know, like, because everybody else is kind of looking out for themselves, but she was the one trying to do the right thing. Like kind of acting like the mom when Peter and Rocket would be like, you know, oh, maybe we can get some money out of this. She's kind of like, guys, we're doing it for the moral goodness of the whole thing. Like, so I'm kind of interested to see that. And I'm also interested to see whether that will tie in with the Adam Warlock stuff, since he technically is the one that's going to be hunting them down. Is it a race to see who gets to Gamora first? Well, him, however they want to address him. But yeah. I really want to see how that's going to go. It seems like it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of intrigue around it.
I'm going to add one more thing. It's interesting that like Nebula and Gamora's roles have changed. Like Nebula was the one that was like completely just like aloof at the end of things, and you know, like she like Gamora was the one that reached out to Nebula and kind of pulled her back into like good, or pulled her into good. And now this time with Endgame, it was Nebula pulling Gamora out. So it's going to be interesting.
It will be. And I think that sisterly connection, I hope their sisterly connection is going to play a role in them finding her, just because I think after all this time, the two of them deserve, you know, a better relationship.
They need their ending, their good ending.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
So obviously it's going to be a huge part of Guardians 3 once James Gunn can finally start working on that. I know he's tied up with Suicide Squad reboot right now, but the version of Gamora that is alive now is basically the same person who we saw at the very start of Guardians 1. Like the very start of Guardians 1 is when 2014 Thanos, Gamora, and everyone go into the future. So all we know about that version of Gamora is that she was looking for anything to get away from Thanos. That's why she was trying to get the orb. She thought that she could sell it and get like as far away from Thanos as possible. So basically the one thing that she was focused on in her life is now gone. Like she needs to run from Thanos because he's dead. She knows that. So she left. Who knows what her frame of mind is? I think that's fascinating because there's limitless possibilities. Obviously the Guardians are looking for her. She at that time does not have a good relationship with Nebula. Like Candy pointed out, the roles have been flipped where Nebula's looking for her. She's probably not too interested in looking for Nebula because despite them working together briefly there in Endgame, they never got along. So she's obviously not. She shows Quill that she's not thrilled to see him because she missed them both the first time and then got them both the second time.
And then also Nebula has like the connections with the Guardians. Like at this point, Nebula knows them better than Gamora does, which is a weird dynamic.
It's like the same situation, just like flipped, and it's weird.
Yes. So it just there's no reason for her to want to be with that group. Probably in her mind, Nebula has this whole family now that she's attached to, and she doesn't know. So it's probably got to be weird for her. So she's probably off searching for some sort of new identity. And like you both pointed out, maybe Adam Warlock is seeking her as well because the gold priestess chick birthed him at the end of Dark It's probably like one of his first orders is to find the Guardians. So that maybe that plays a role into Guardians 3. But yeah, I think that there's just unlimited possibilities where they can take her character. It's almost like a blank slate.
Well, I like that you brought up Adam Warlock like that because it's interesting, and I just came to this like thoughts. I'm still working it out, but like Adam Warlock was created to kill the Guardians and was created for this purpose, or him, however they're gonna name him. But that's what Gamora was like almost created as well, to kill people and to be like Thanos's like person. So it's like, is it going to be like some heartfelt story to help find like each other, like find where we are outside of that?
I like where you're going.
I don't know. I like this. I'm working through this as we go.
Well, I like where you're going with it because the singular episode that I ever caught of the Guardians of the Galaxy animated TV show actually dealt with Adam Warlock being born, and he grew from a child to an adult really fast, and of course they end up kidnapping, quote unquote, kidnapping him. And because Adam Warlock is with them and sees the way that they function, he actually decides to be a hero instead of being a villain. So I don't know if maybe they will do something like that, and he and Gamora make a connection and can kind of, she can heal through him and he can grow to find his own, moral compass through her. I think it's a really cool storyline.
Yeah. I mean, they'd be finding it together because they both don't know really who they are without their creators. We're going to call them that now. So they're very similar characters at this point, as far as we know what we know.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I think that's a really, really intriguing idea. Again, anybody from Marvel or Disney that's listening, take notes. We're coming up with good ideas.
Flash, was up for being a writer on the show.
Yeah.
I'll take some royalty checks once they, adapt our screenplay.
I'm only
I agree.
Y'all, like LA's right there.
Yeah. Candy's gonna be our way in. That's your job, Candy. Also, if anybody thinks this is really intriguing and wants to write a blog for Mark runs ourpwnsmedia.com. So if you haven't heard of that, shameless plug, go ahead and go check us out. Speaking of shameless plugs, I'm going to take us right into other moments of time travel. I know we talked a lot about the MCU and how they time travel. Actually, for time, I'm going to skip other instances of time travel, and we're going to switch comic universes and go to DC. I wore this shirt with a lot of intention because not only is The Flash my favorite superhero, but The Flash is DC's big premier time traveling hero. So we've heard for a long time, I don't know if anybody can confirm when the Flashpoint movie was officially first talked about, but I know I've been waiting for years for the Flashpoint movie. So if it ever happens, we're going to talk about what that will be like for DC. Because obviously we've had our Justice League movie, and we have Batman being played now by Robert Pattinson. And that spells some weird stuff for DC on how they're going to do the Justice League moving forward. And with the Flashpoint, how it's portrayed in the comics, and with sorry, I just got a text message that distracted me. What's been portrayed in the comics and the Flashpoint animated movie, we see that the Flash, Barry Allen Flash, so the Flash that we have seen in the Justice League, finally decides that he is going to go back in time and save his mother. He figures out that his nemesis, the Reverse Flash, is the one who killed his mother. So he goes back in time and saves her life and sets off the ultimate butterfly effect of butterfly effects. And the new timeline he comes into is one where Aquaman and Wonder Woman are at war. They're taking the whole world with them. Superman is a government science experiment. one of the cool things I think that comes out of it is Cyborg actually becomes kind of the big hero in that universe. I thought that was a really cool thing. And then the other really interesting one is we have Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas Wayne, as the Batman. So in this universe, Bruce is the one that died that night at the theater, and it causes his father to take up the mantle of the Batman, and his mother becomes the Joker. So obviously, with all of that, it's a very different world. I wanted to ask you guys how much of that you think we might see in a Flashpoint movie. What do you think, Mark? What do you think we could see from that?
I mean, I think based on how much they've pulled from different source materials in the past, I mean, they pulled pretty aggressively from The Dark Knight Returns for Batman versus Superman. I mean, they're not shy about accessing the source material. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a lot of this. And I think that a Flashpoint movie, if it it does end up happening, would be pretty critical, only because in the comics it essentially kind of resets that universe. It sets up the New 52.
The New 52.
So I think that since we're not going to be moving forward with the same type of Justice League that even after the beloved Snyder cut, moving forward with that same group. So having a Flashpoint movie that touches on all those elements actually could be really good, because it could help them reset that universe where you could have a Robert Pattinson, a younger Batman now around. You can have Henry Cavill, who we talked about last episode, has signed on for at least 2 or 3 more Superman films. You can have him both as that science experiment and then as regular Superman again. It could serve as just a blatant reset point. Like, hey, everything that we have done that we've either succeeded in some smaller in some of the solo movies, and we've failed massively in some of our none of it exists anymore. This is just like the complete reset of DC on the big screen, and what you see from here on out is what we have moving forward. I think it would be the easiest way for them to kind of give themselves a clean slate. So I think that from that perspective, we could see a ton of what happens in that comic, because it could explain why you have these characters doing what they're doing.
Yes, and I agree, and I'm glad you brought up the New 52, because that is exactly what they did with their comics. Is they use that to reset. They use Flashpoint, that exact event, to reset their heroes entirely, which is kind of looking like what they might need to do here with the movies. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's the best thing that they can do after having screwed up what should have been the best part of the entire DC movie universe. Because I'm not going to say all of it sucked. I mean, Wonder Woman was great. I really liked Shazam. I have not watched Aquaman, but that's because I have a phobia of sharks, and yeah, that's never going to happen.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, it's not clearly not one of my favorite superheroes. But it gives them an opportunity to kind of cherry pick the things that work, and just completely shelve the things that didn't work. And I think them keeping Henry Cavill is such a great thing, because he was a great Clark Kent, and he was a great Superman when he doesn't have that fake mustache. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. I just them keeping what worked, and obviously by Batfleck. I'm one of the few who liked him, but I'm keeping it hopeful that Robert Pattinson does a good job of sort of bringing this together with the new clean slate. So far, I think Mark and I were on the same page with that. It looks promising, so we'll see.
Yes, and how do you feel, Candy?
Okay, so disclaimer, I am not a DC fan. That being said, I'm going to piggyback off what y'all said, so thanks for I think that one of the big things, and I'm going to go for Marvel here really fast, was with the movies, they made it super accessible to people who hadn't read the comics. I was a comic book fan of Marvel before that. I wasn't a comic book fan for DC, and I'm not of the movies. And the movies aren't doing anything to make me want to be a fan. So if they
That's fair.
so if they have a point where they reset, I might give it another chance. But as of right now, I haven't I've watched a couple, and what I've seen, it's like I can't get into it. And I don't know if it's just like my loyalty, but like if they want to do what Marvel did and what with Disney and like how they created this universe and really make it like something you can dive into, I'm all for that. I would love to get into DC.
I appreciate you because I'm for both, but I love that you're bringing that up because I feel like that's very true. They have people that might not support it as much, but again, if anybody's listening, we've got people out there that want to be into DC. Give them a reason to love it. And I think maybe it's just that I really love The Flash. He's one of the most, maybe not most underrated. That's not true. He's not the most underrated, but his powers and the extent that his powers have are very rarely ever portrayed as what they could be. I mean, this guy has traveled instantaneously. I don't mean running somewhere. I mean, he went from point A to point B instantaneously before in the comics. So I really like the idea that he would be the character that allows DC to get a jump start and to be able to really take off for people. So I personally, I'm super excited.
Would you be okay with them keeping Ezra Miller as Flash, or are you one of the Grant Gustin fans?
He's been canceled.
I was about to say it's really hard with he's put himself in a really, really bad position, I think, because not only is cancel culture such a big thing now, I feel like it's gotten like more and more intense over time, but it's hit like an all-time high right now.
He canceled? What happened?
I think it's fair though. When you're talking about superhero movies, you don't want somebody who doesn't represent a superhero. I'm sorry. Like, I'm 100% for cancel culture when it's like, in general, but like superheroes especially.
Mark, will you remind us what he did? Because I don't want to talk about it.
I'm sorry, I had no idea.
No, you're good.
Into an incident with people who are fans of his, where it you can we're not going to get into the minutia, but basically he did some very bad things, some somewhat unsanitary things to people who didn't deserve to be treated that way.
Yes, which again, and with what Candy said, I think I would ultimately have to agree with that. And there's only one reason it upsets me, guys, because I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't love him as the Flash. Like, I agree. I think Henry Cavill has done a great job as Superman. I've talked before on Nerd Pod about how I'm devastated that Christian Bale isn't still Batman. But Ezra Miller is the Flash. I could take or leave. But what worries me is getting him the right role. The TV actor, I don't know his name. I'm really bad on actors. But the actor that plays the Flash in the TV show, I think has done a really good job. Yes. I think has done a really, really good job with portraying Barry Allen and who I think Barry Allen is as a character. Do I think he would do a crossover? No, which is unfortunate. But I would be all for them finding someone who's going to do a really, really good job, but who's also going to be dedicated to the Flash role. I don't want to keep watching superheroes change.
Yes.
I know.
That's DC's biggest problem, I feel like, in movies, is the lack of consistency, where like you fall in love with Iron Man because you fall in love with like Robert Downey Jr. Like thing Marvel's always been talked about, and I'm talking about Marvel because I don't know DC. But of DC is like you don't fall in love with the characters and then they change, so there is no like love because it feels like a whole different like character because it is. It's a different actor in a different way with different mannerisms. Like you need consistency and you need to think long term. If DC is going to be as successful as like Marvel is, and what I want to see from DC, like what I want from DC, I want another universe that I can love. And in order to do that, they need to think about like characters and casting and long term.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with comparing to Marvel because Marvel's the gold standard. And that's what DC themselves are desperately trying to get to, and the problems that they've created for themselves is because they tried to rush into being Marvel before they could develop all of their individual characters in solo films. So by trying to be Marvel, they screwed themselves over, when in reality they should have followed that exact model.
Well,
Yes.
how did it take Marvel? It was like what, a 10-year like
Yeah.
development.
I mean, 22 films. It took them a long time. And what I always wonder, the one thing that I've wondered about the Flashpoint and them using that as a reset point, is I could see a lot of people attacking them. Attacking might be an aggressive word, but I could see a lot of people getting really, really upset about that and calling it a cop-out, just because they haven't done well. So let's round robin that. Do you guys think people would be valid in saying that DC has copped out by resetting their universe, or do you think it would be a good thing? What do you think, Candy?
So I mean,
I think I know.
I think I don't again know, but based on what you've been saying, this has been like a point in the comics. It's not like they've just found about it this way and it's like rushed in order to like reset everything. It's only a cop out if they don't do anything with it afterwards.
Okay, I like that. Strong, short, and sweet. What do you think, Michelle?
I think it wouldn't be a cop out. What are they supposed to do now that I found about what happened with Ezra, and then everything else that's happened? Like with Affleck not wanting to be Batman, it's just they can't keep it alive. Not story wise, and definitely not with the actors. So it's not a cop out. It's the only logical thing they can do to keep it alive and salvage it and turn it hopefully into something that's worthy of what DC films used to be, which used to be the gold standard before Iron Man. It was The Dark Knight, like Superman 2, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm all for it. It's not a cop out. It's the best thing they can do at this point. Just clear out the crap, keep what's good, and let's move forward.
I like that we're in consensus. And what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's the opposite of a cop-out. I mean, I think that, no, first and foremost, so there is going to be people who complain if they do that, just because you have the whether it's a minority or a majority, a subsection of DC fandom that believes that Justice League was very good. They're like they think
Candy's face
have all been incredible. So they will take resetting that universe as if Justice League and the accompanying films never happened as like a slap in the face. But even if they're not happy with it, it still wouldn't. You couldn't describe it as a cop out, because you're essentially admitting your mistake and trying to reset things and move on. Like similar to what Mish was just saying, they had a head start on Marvel. Yeah. Like they had Batman Begins, which was, and granted, I don't like seeing origin stories all over and over again. That was a very good origin story for Batman. And then obviously, as Iron Man was coming out, The Dark Knight, which I still think is the best comic book film of all time.
It was so good.
It came out. So really, they had two awesome movies while the Marvel Cinematic Universe was still, just
was in its infancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you just kind of reset, get back to basics, you have your Flashpoint movie that resets things, and then you can just go back to doing individual solo films, which have been good. Wonder Woman was very good. Aquaman was a commercial success at the very least, and people didn't hate it. And Shazam I think, was good too. And Man of Steel, before they tried to rush that Dark Knight Returns style sequel, Man of Steel was very good. So their solo films have been good. Get back to that, and then you can eventually build to your shared universe. I'm very excited for the Batman. I think that Pattinson is going to be really good. I think that people give him a bad rap for the Twilight stuff. Like I wouldn't have liked it either. Like so.
Shit about Twilight so much. It is he is the least fan of Twilight in the world.
Exactly. He didn't even like his own stuff.
Very good. Like if anyone goes and sees Good Time, he was very good in that. Tenet is going to be incredible. I can't wait to see him in that. Like he's a very good actor. Excited to see Patman.
Yeah.
I love that you're a Patman stan. Yeah, I think it's gonna be their perfect. I hope people don't take it as a cop out, but I could see, like you said, the people that think that stuff is good. But I mean, it's kind of like we've all said. I feel like it's their perfect way out. I think them doing Patman's version of Batman right now would be great timing also, because then they're kind of able to do what they did with Iron Man, and they're able to build his character more before they give us a Flashpoint movie. So we already are going into the Reset universe familiar with Batman. Hopefully Henry Cavill would keep being Superman, and Gal Gadot would be Wonder Woman, and why am I blanking? Jason Momoa would be Aquaman. You know, hopefully we could keep those characters. Yeah. I feel like women everywhere would riot if Jason Momoa stopped being Aquaman.
That would be the end. That would be the end of it for me. He come back, it would be over, done.
Now, we've talked a lot about going back in time, and so we have a little bit of time here left, and I want us all to be able to take a trip back in our personal timelines and kind of talk about our nerdy origins. You know, when do you feel like you started being nerdy, or what got you into whatever you think makes you nerdy? I'm going to go ahead and let's start with Mark, because Mark, Candy, and I actually just did an episode on Girls Pod, one for the girls, if you want to go over there and listen to that, about our childhood. So go ahead, Mark, share what made you nerdy.
Yeah. Shout out Girls Pod. If you already listened to that episode, who knows what our timeline is going to be for releasing episodes.
Yeah.
If you already listened to that episode, or if you haven't listened yet, I'll give you a sneak preview. My weekends usually consisted of me kind of getting up, pounding down a bowl of cereal, and going and watching Power Rangers and the Spider-Man cartoon on Fox Kids. That was like my Saturday morning, and that was kind of like my nerd origin. I got into comic books along with like Animorphs books at
I loved Animorphs.
Yeah, early age. So like I was reading, kind of sci-fi type of stuff at that age. So when I was like 6 or 7, that was really the start for me.
Nice. I like that it went back that far for you. How about you, Michelle?
For me, it was kind of the same thing as Mark, waking up Saturday morning cartoons, and, also like coming X-Men, the animated series, that type of stuff, that got me really into super. And, also, I think my first comic was like World's Finest. It was like the Batman, Superman, comic where they would team up and take on the Joker. I still have the book.
Nice.
And I remember just reading the comics and just thinking, wow, this is amazing. And then from then on, I became a collector. And to this day, my mom, every time she sees something in the mail come in, she's like, please don't tell me it's a comic or a Funko. And I'm just like, you might want to look away, Mom.
Right, exactly.
Just look away. So,
it's fine. Don't worry about what it is.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really cool. When I get my nerd room up, maybe you and I can compare collections of our nerdy stuff.
Oh, for sure.
How do you feel, Candy? Where's your nerdy origin start?
Oh, so I was a Harry Potter nerd first. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
That was probably my nerdiest, if we're being honest. But like, I would digest those books, and it would be like just like page after page of like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? I could tell you that the necklace was a Horcrux like right after I read about Horcruxes. We went like, I had my friend Shayna, and we used to go back and just like, we'd sit in my pool and just like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? But I also spent a lot of time at the library, like a lot, like most of my childhood, like after school, weekends, and just be at the library because it was a place to be. We had ice cream socials there. It was like, just, I don't know, it was kind of like the hangout when you're in like elementary school. I used to walk, and it was right down the street. That's where I got into comic books, and it was mainly Spider-Man. I had been a Spider-Man fan since elementary school.
I never would have guessed. No, yes, we love it.
I am huge into Spider-Man, and really love the casting on that lately too. Thank God. Tobey Maguire ones.
Oh God.
But books, I was just a book nerd. Aragon, Harry Potter, all.
Yes. So when I was talking about dragons earlier, do you feel me on dragons? Are you a dragon person too?
I
adore
really wish they would come out with an Aragon like movie.
Yes.
That was shit.
Yeah.
Redo that movie. Redo
Yes,
it because
please.
oh my god.
All of
Oh
them.
my god.
The last books got so complicated, and like I was just so into those, and like big and beautiful books.
Yes, I agree. I would love if they remade. I should have included that. We had an episode two back, where we talked about things we wish would be like made into things, and I wish they would do Aragon just because I love dragons so much. And the movie wasn't good. I don't think the Aragon movie was good, but I always loved that dragon. I just thought she was beautifully done.
Yeah, they just changed too many things. Like you couldn't do a sequel to it. It would just like the sequels didn't make any sense after that movie. So
yeah,
I was a book nerd. That's how I got it. Books came when I went to the library, and then
I like that.
Marvel and like Spider-Man just kind of like spun out into everything else.
For all of our listeners who can't see Candy, first of all, you should follow us at the Pones Media YouTube channel. But she is wearing a Spider-Man onesie, I love it. It's the best.
I have two boys, and we have done Marvel-themed Halloweens now for 2 years in a row. So
I might steal that idea this coming Halloween. I love that. So my nerdy origin starts young, I think, like all of us. My dad actually kind of got me into the nerdy stuff. He played like World of Warcraft. He played a lot of those, what I would say are nerdier type games. So mine actually started more with fantasy. So things like dragons and unicorns and magic and that kind of stuff. And as I got older, I watched the old the old Hercules and Xena TV shows.
Nice.
Yes, I loved, and I used to run around my house doing the Xena yell, and that drove my mom crazy. So that, no, not right now, not without practice. But that got me, again, that's kind of fantasy. You know, I love Greek mythology. I think all of that is really cool. And then when I was up really late, I had an issue where I wouldn't go to sleep when I was little. So I would watch Adult Swim, and that's where I found my love for anime. So, and obviously some of us who, like, if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z when you were little, that was an anime. Sailor Moon, Pokemon is technically considered an anime. So I think all of us have watched some anime, but that's where I, like, head first dove into the nerddom, was just running away with anime shows. And I actually got into more comic book stuff in high school when I met my fiance. We met freshman year of high school. He kind of got me more and pulled me into the comic book part of being a nerd. And again, just anything like that, I'm all for it. Give me like superpowers and magic and any of it. I'm willing to take it on. So I'm kind of a nondescript nerd. You know, I'm not part of one specific nerd sanction. I love Harry Potter, read all the books, grew up with all the movies. Like I've already said, Aragon and anything with dragons. So I really just kind of grew up universally nerdy. And that's what brings me to my next topic is I know I grew up with some stigmas around being nerdy. Mark, again, in our One for the Girls pod, talked about his stigmas that boys weren't allowed to talk about Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. It wasn't cool. Well, cool. I remember being little and everybody watched like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. And so, you know, I talk about Sailor Moon with the girls and then I go to the guys and we talk about Dragon Ball Z. And I remember at some point going to the guys and trying to talk about Dragon Ball Z and them kind of being like, oh, well, I don't watch that show anymore. Like everybody just started to get too cool for certain things. And so I stopped talking about it. I just stopped talking about my love for anime, and it got to the point where like if I was watching it on my TV and like my mom walked in, I changed the channel. Like nobody could know that I watched anime. And so I wanted to round robin with you guys and see if any of you ever felt like your nerdiness was kind of stigmatized, and then how you feel like being nerdy, quote unquote, has changed over time to where we are today. So what do you think, Candy?
So I was never really like stigmatized for it. Again, a lot of my stuff went really mainstream. Obviously, Marvel turned like mainstream, so everybody loves that, even if they weren't into the comics. So I got lucky on that. Back then, nobody really gave me anything for it. It wasn't like, and like Harry Potter was like my age group, our age group. Mm-hmm. almost fun.
Yeah.
So like that wasn't ever like the movies came out and everybody loved that.
Yes.
The people who didn't were the weird ones. Like, okay, like sorry if you don't like magic, like
yeah.
right? Like
See,
I don't know what else to say except I'm sorry. Like
well, no, it's fine. And I mean, it's you say that, and yet to me, I feel like even Harry Potter was something. I mean, yeah, we talked about it, but it wasn't till a lot later that it'd be like, oh, what house are you? Like, we didn't talk about what Harry Potter house we were at school or anything like that. I don't know if it was like that for you.
books. But
Yeah.
I also went through puberty at a really young age, so maybe that helped.
People were like, hey.
I was always talking to like people older than me. I didn't really have
Yeah.
my own age, so like books weren't bad.
Yeah.
Did happen a lot though was the gender thing.
Okay.
The thing with the comic specific.
Comic stuff, yeah.
It was like, oh, you just want to like you just into that because you think like
you wanted
that, like
mm-hmm.
oh, you don't actually like that, or like, oh yeah, sure, Spider-Man. Like it was like, I don't know. And I was into wrestling. I was into a bunch of lesbian things, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a thing, and I think that's so ridiculous, and I hope we're moving past that. Do you feel like we're moving past that to where, you know, if you're a woman, you can be just as nerdy about comics as guys, and no one's going to give you crap for it?
I feel like we're moving past a lot of the guy stuff, but not as the women's side. So I feel like there's more acceptance with guys doing more traditionally like girly things, but like with pop culture specifically, not really with everything else. I don't know. I mean, my nephews, my nephews really got into like what do you call it, pink and purple and all that. And like cool for them to like pink. Like it almost became like Zachary is going into high school. He's in middle school now, and this was a couple of years ago, and he was a cool kid and like bright pink socks, bright pink shirts, bright purple stuff like that. And then there was the whole brony phase for a while with guys, right?
Yes. Oh my God, that was a weird one.
I guess like there's like more sporty clothing are in for girls and stuff, and like culture-wise though, like I don't know.
It is. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, it's fine. I just feel like it's almost like switching. Like I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a weird one for us because I do sometimes feel like there are instances where it seems like things have progressed a lot, and then there are other times when it's like, nope, it's still just what it was in 2000, or you know, whatever frame of reference we have for that. I'm glad you were able to be your full Harry Potter nerdy self, but it always makes me sad to hear when women are, you know, kind of given a lot of a hard time, and that men, no offense, Mark, no, not trying to offend anybody, but it seems that men tend to try to put what women like into a frame where they think it's all about them. So I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. But I'll give Mark a chance.
I mean, people like I went with in line waiting for the books at midnight for Harry Potter, so that was cool.
That is cool. I'm glad you had good experiences. What about you, Mark? How was being nerdy for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting time because I think that, you know, when you were young, both, you know, boys and girls, I think that you almost, when you were, you know, getting older, you had to be like two different people, whether you were at school or at home. When I was at home, I would read my comics. I would, I watch what shows I wanted to do. I didn't, you know, like you said, Christian, where sometimes you would kind of like hide watching anime from your parents. Like I didn't like change my behavior around my friends and family. They knew what I liked. They didn't see anything wrong with what I liked. So I just, you know, kept being myself. But, you know, when you get to be like in second or third grade, that's when, you know, if you're a guy, you're supposed to be into sports and like you wear jerseys to school and you go play basketball at recess. You don't play with your Pokemon cards anymore. If you brought your Pokemon cards to school, you were a dork. No one talked to you. So I had to legitimately, you know, I didn't have to, but peer pressure.
It caused you to,
you do something different. So I didn't, you know, talk about the, you know, that I watched, the Batman animated series last night, or that when Power Rangers wasn't cool. I keep going back to Power Rangers, but that when watching Power Rangers wasn't cool anymore, I was still watching it because that then you're a geek, you're a dork. So
yeah,
you definitely it was an interesting time because I remember almost being two different people. I was growing up until I got to high school, when I was like, at that point, the hell with it. Like, I'm not going to see people after a couple more years. I might as well just enjoy what I want to enjoy.
See, I definitely relate to that. You pretty much hit the nail on the head when you said being like two different people. I feel like that's what it was for me growing up, being nerdy too. How about you, Michelle?
Yeah, definitely. It was, for me, there was two different me's that existed at the time, especially I think from middle school to high school. Because to be fair, the people I hung around with, they probably also had two versions of themselves too, because it wasn't cool to dress up on movie premieres back in the day. Like, they would be like, fuck, look at this freaking nerd. Like,
right?
You're on the outside, they're like, look at him, he's in an Iron Man suit. On the inside, like, I want that Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
But that was just the reality of it. I mean, I still collected comic books, figures, and all that stuff, but in school and around some other friends, it was kind of different priorities, and maybe it was because maybe it was kind of not taboo, but just not cool.
Kind of,
I guess,
yeah, right.
Stuff. But I would sometimes just like kind of try to break those barriers and be like, hey man, I just got comics, I'm just not gonna go out to drink tonight. So I would try to break that little bit of a barrier. But I feel like compared to now it's a lot more acceptable. Like, now it's cool. You are cool. The more you dress up for the movies, in your favorite superhero gear, the cooler you look. And I wish that had existed when I was in school, because that would have been a lot more freeing, I feel like. Whether it's superhero or Harry Potter, whatever you like. Like, even Pokemon, when I was in high school, if you still had Pokemon cards, honestly, they would shame you. And I'm just like, yo, I still have my Charizard. Like, don't be mean, don't be rude.
Right. I like what I like.
Yeah, and now when the game came back, it was just like everybody and their mom was like, did you catch this one? I'm like, I'm catching them. Like, I'm trying. I gotta work though, but yeah, there's one right here next to me.
Yeah, sure. Right, exactly. People are doing meetups and stuff. Like,
exactly. Just like, I wish this existed when I was going through my youth. But at least it's a good thing for the newer generations, that they can grow up and be free with what they care about, where now social media allows you to find your niche, and you don't feel like it's like you have to be two different people. And I agree with Candy too, about like the gender thing. It still happens sometimes, where you'll say, like, whether it's sports or certain thing that you care about, you'll almost get quizzed about it. Like, if I say, oh, I think Tom Brady is the #1 quarterback of all time, oh, is it because he's cute? Yeah, right. But he's also got the stats. or if I say, oh, I'm a Superman fan. Oh, what's the name of his first appearance? I don't know. It might be Action Comics #1. I don't know. Let me Google it.
Yeah.
Like, you get quizzed as a girl when on stuff like that, and it kind of sucks. I feel like that's still something that we can still work at when it comes to breaking the gender stuff. But Mark, just a quick question: Backstreet Boys or NSYNC? Quick, don't think about it.
Listen to the pod.
Yeah, listen to the pod.
He does answer the question in the pod. He does.
So you do pick it? All right, I'm gonna listen to the pod.
Go.
JT, all the way.
No, but I'm getting.
Oh, okay.
Well, I want to say really fast that you can be a fan and not know every detail.
Exactly. Yes.
Fandom does not depend on how much knowledge you know about the subject. You are allowed to like things just because you like it. You do not need to know the origin story of the first comic that came out and what year and blah blah blah. Like, screw that. I'm sorry. Like,
Reach.
Don't have to be quizzed at all.
yes, but especially because you're a woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that is the perfect message to send. Very well said. And I'm glad that I would agree with Michelle saying that I think certain things about being nerdy have progressed a lot. Like my sister and I, one of the biggest things we bond over is watching anime. And I know she has friends that watch anime with her, and she does put it out on her social media. And it makes me so happy because I didn't get, like, superhero stuff became cool way earlier than, I feel like anime is kind of becoming more mainstream now and a little bit cooler, but like in high school I was comfortable talking about superheroes, but I would not have breathed a word to anyone about anime in high school, and that didn't start happening till I was an adult. I didn't get my first anime t-shirt until I was like 23. Like, I still feel weird when I talk about it. Actually doing this nerd pod and putting it out there was a challenge to myself to just accept that I am nerdy and that it's okay, and that even if I don't like all the mainstream nerdy stuff, it's still okay. So I want to leave everybody with that message that, you know, what you like, what brings you joy, you should feel free to express. If you, I mean, okay, let's be real, like, unless it's something that is harmful to other people, like, if you like setting fires to houses, like, no, I'm sorry, you don't get to do that. But if you decide, right? If you decide that you love something and it brings you joy, love it. Don't be ashamed. Put yourself out there and be who you are. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and end it out for the day. Remember, Pones Media is not just a place to listen to podcasts. You can now watch us on YouTube. We have Instagram and Twitter, and all of our wonderful people also have handles where you can follow us. Candy, where can people follow you?
You can find me at Twitter on Candy with the I_Lee_Bell, or you can find me on Instagram at Candy Lee Bell, all one handle.
Awesome. Michelle, where can we find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Mitch1128, also known as Count Boozy von Drunkaton. Clearly, you know, this was not water.
Spoiler alert, because we didn't know that.
Devolved. No. That's why it's devolved. Like I started here and I ended kind of like, you can't even see it in the video anymore. But, yeah.
I love it. Besides, I'm going to let Mark do his socials, but guys, don't forget, ponesmedia.com. Where can people find you on your socials, though, Mark?
So I can be found at Mark Pacelli13 on Twitter.com. And if you're watching right now,
he has done the full Thanos glove debut for us. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at It's Me, Christian G. That's Christian with a K. And that is it for today's Nerd Pod, guys. Everybody say bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.